welcome back to GTD. I'm Micah Farmer, joined as always by Keegan Miller, and it was a good NASCAR race at Pocono this past weekend. Time to dive right into it, give you every bit of news and action from the Tricky Triangle this past weekend. First, we have to give a quick shout out to my guy Connor Zilich for winning the Xfinity race, and Dale Jr. is now undefeated as a crew chief, so pretty fun storyline from Saturday. But moving to Sunday, Chase Briscoe gets his first win for Joe Gibbs Racing, his first win overall since the Southern 500 victory for a dying Stewart-Haas team last year, and had to do a lot of fuel saving to get it done. Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney chasing him down from behind, but the Stage 2 winner did end up getting his first win of the season and locking himself into the playoffs. Now 11 different winners on the season with 9 races remaining in the regular season. So, Keegan, let's dive right into it. I think my main thing I want to talk about here, is it just elite fuel saving from Chase Briscoe that got this done, or was it maybe harder to pass than the broadcast was saying, or that we really thought going in? I'll give credit to the Prime crew. They made this seem like a really exciting battle down to the finish, but how much of it do you think was just Briscoe being able to maintain that speed while fuel saving, and how much do you think was the lack of ability to pass from Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, Chase Briscoe did a great job saving fuel, right? But it's different because he wasn't racing other drivers saving fuel. It wasn't like 3 guys like we've seen earlier this season that were all trying to save enough fuel to make it and all had a different number of fuel. It was one guy saving fuel and driving like he had to save fuel versus a field behind him that didn't have to save fuel. That guy should not win. The guy who's barely on the guy who's saving fuel should not win, especially when those cars weren't that. It's not like he had like laps on like a short track. It was hard to pass all day. After restarts, after the first 2 turns, like turn 1 and the tunnel turn on a restart, how many passing? I mean, you saw a lot of guys get runs and come down, but that was really only if guys like Dale Jr. likes to say arguing. If 2 guys were arguing side by side, then you see the third car kind of get a run and go past them. But how many times do you see like a straight up pass like into a long run? It wasn't very often, and that was. I mean, we said this last week. We weren't super excited for Pocono because it's just been like, I feel like this is the track that's just fallen flat every year since the next gen. Because even like some of the short tracks, they've done tire things and things that they've changed to make it more interesting. This has just been flat for the last 4 years at this point.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I was curious what you were going to say on this, and I totally agree. There's no reason a guy that is 3 laps short at Pocono should be able to fully lift off into every corner and still outrun the best of all time at this track in Denny Hamlin. Yeah. And I know they were talking about maybe Denny Hamlin outdrove the car a little bit. Well, regardless, even Blaney, I think, was the fastest of those 3 cars and couldn't get by either of them, although he had his own issues, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Chase Briscoe, I think you still do have to give credit to the drive, because this is a guy who, he said after the race, he's prone to over-driving, so being able to relax back in there and control the fuel, not run out. Good performance from Briscoe, and I think a win that James Small, as a crew chief, desperately needed. Really struggled to win with Martin Truex Jr., even though he was kind of on his way out. So to get this win, they talked about, I bet I heard the word execute in conjunction with Chase Briscoe in that 19 team about 80,000 times over the past month, and they finally did it today. They absolutely needed to, but you talked about the difficulty to pass. I really think Brad Keselowski and Ryan Blaney were the only 2 cars I saw able to consistently pass all day. Blaney came from the back of the field twice. Keselowski obviously had the pit road penalty, getting called in when it was closed, and then when he got caught by the caution to stay out and made his way all the way back up to the top 10 again. So other than those 2 guys, you're right, a lot of people were stuck. I remember there were guys that I was like, oh, well, they have fast cars. They're surely going to come through the field. Carson Hocevar had a top 5, top 10 car for a lot of the first half of this race, got mired back and really ended up stuck in the 10th to 15th area for a lot of the second half of this race. It was just too difficult to pass yet again, and especially at a track like Pocono where turn 1, there's really only one line that works well. You can try to find different space, but it's mainly the one line in turn 1. Tunnel turn is definitely only one line, and then turn 3, I would give you, maybe you have 2 lines there with the outside and the inside, but they still kind of clip each other, so the dirty air still has an effect in turn 3, and if you're going to have these cars which have such a huge air wash, it's going to be difficult to pass at a place like Pocono. But regardless, not to take any credit away from Chase Briscoe in that win, did do a great job in the 19.
And that's That's what I would highlight. Chase Briscoe. I mean, he's got 2 wins within the course of one season with 2 different teams. And one team was a Stuart Haas team that, yes, they knew they were going out of business, so they probably brought the best car they'd built in 4 years to that race. But it doesn't matter. They didn't have any of the funding, anything like other teams did. So he got a win there, and he's got a win here. There's not a whole lot of players in NASCAR right now that have more than one win in that course of that season. I mean, obviously, Larson, Hamlin, Logano, guys like that. But he's up there with those guys now with multiple wins in the course of one season from Darlington to now this summer. And it just looks like he's going to keep competing. He struggled mightily, and that's new car, not even new car, new manufacturer, new everything for him. So yeah, you're going to accept a little bit of a cushion for him. And now he's just, like you said, executed. He's just been there every week. So this might be the beginning
he has a slight handicap on top of the box in James Small. Not a great crew chief.
Yeah, so this might be
still
kind
delivering
of a thing we see happen over the course of the season, and he may be someone to reckon with later. I mean, he's got experience at tracks now. He's one of the older guys in the ring. Yeah, I gave you a lot of flack for that at the beginning of the season, but now I'm looking at it and I'm like, if he just can get lucky in the because now that he knows he's in the playoffs and he can focus on that, if he just gets lucky in the second round of the playoffs and gets hot after that,
because he has speed,
yeah,
he's had speed for about 2 months now, and finally all the execution was brought together today. So I'm super excited to watch the 19 the rest of the year. But let's talk about the heat. And I feel like this was a story that wasn't really touched on a ton I feel like it played a big impact. You had cars sliding around all over the place. You had drivers that looked dead. Ryan Blaney, after this race, his cool suit failed in stage 1, and they said he was down on his knees, down on the ground after the race, and just barely had enough to stand up and give the interview to Prime. And you could tell he sounded completely gassed, like he had nothing left. Chase Elliott sounded absolutely tired. I know people say, oh, it's just Chase Elliott. He never has any personality. He sounded exhausted. Chris Buescher sounded exhausted. Denny Hamlin sounded exhausted. I feel like every single guy they talked to had nothing left. Just brutal heat today. They said it was hotter than they expected. I imagine the extra humidity after the rain passed through didn't help a lot. So how do you think that affected this race?
I think that's part of the reason you saw the brake rotor issues that we did with Michael McDowell and the 22311 cars, because they mentioned on the broadcast that teams do have a little bit of leeway with what brake rotors they use. And obviously the ones 2311 opted to go with this weekend were not
exploded.
Yeah. But I do think that they were probably planning for a different temperature and probably hoping that they could, get a harsher brake in there to make some things happen. But I think that's probably part of the reason why you had the brake rotors explode with them and Michael McDowell. But also, the tires were shredding. It didn't really play a huge role in the race just because tire wear doesn't necessarily affect racing at Pocono that much. But if this had been another track, like a short track, I think it would have been like Bristol last year. I mean, those tires were just degraded. You could, by the end of the race, it was some of the walls were painted black just from when cars would get close to them on corner exit and just fling rubber onto them. It was pretty cool to watch, actually, with tire degradation.
The marbles were crazy, too. I feel like especially in turn 1, you saw all the marbles up there. It felt even larger than normal. But you mentioned 2311, and oh my goodness, the issues just keep coming. We talked about that in the preview. Can they turn it around? They said, what if all our brakes exploded instead? And not really the strategy you want to have going in. Obviously, Riley Herbst exploded first because that's how it tends to go. And then Bubba Wallace lost his into the tunnel turn. Just a weekend of what could have been for the 23 car. Had great speed in practice. Then the car wouldn't start on Saturday. Had the brake rotor explode on Sunday. And then Tyler Reddick. I talked a ton last week about this 45 team cannot finish races. Again, top 5 up in stage 1. Was running 3rd at one point, and then they brought him in, had to change the rotors, ended up finishing, I think, multiple laps down, definitely in the 30s, though. 45 nowhere in the race.
30 seconds.
They can't put a whole race together at all. And you mentioned, is the lawsuit stuff maybe weighing on this team? Because I think front row, too, you've seen it with them. At the start of the year, this was kind of an up-and-coming team. Oh, they have speed on the plate tracks. Can they be fast everywhere else? And I think the year Zane Smith is having in that team needs some more attention because he has been out of this world compared to his 2 teammates. And both front row and 2311 really feel like they've taken a step back this year. And you have to wonder if that lawsuit is playing a big part in it.
Well, yeah, both Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan is a big part of the ownership of that team, but Denny Hamlin is the guy who's been around racing his whole life and is arguably, going to be the guy making the so-called racing decisions and decisions like that he's got the experience to back. And then Michael Jordan, have taken up all their time having to look through documents and papers and go to courts on Monday through Thursday when they're supposed to be working in the shop on cars, and just all this publicity. Denny Hamlin's had a baby on top of all this. I mean, there's just, I would not want to be Denny Hamlin. I mean, obviously the baby's cool, but like, I would just not. It's a lot of stuff. I mean, he's got the kid, which is here and healthy now, and he had the lawsuit, and he's racing for himself, he's racing for his team. It's just a lot going on, and I do think. I mean, I said it last week. I think this lawsuit, especially now that they've lost, it's kind of like they're probably in panic mode, because who knows what's going to happen after that 21-day grace period is up, which is not 21 days anymore. It's down to a few. So
yeah, definitely. So a lot to watch in 23-11 over the coming weeks. But we briefly mentioned front row. Let's talk about another Ford team, and one that's in a considerably better spot. How about RFK Racing? They've had all three cars in the top 10 at the last two oval races, or the last oval and the last triangle for you technicality people out there. They showed speed today. I think that Brad Keselowski was the best car in this race, was one of the best cars of being able to pass, led in stage one, and then was in the lead when Jeremy Bullins did Jeremy Bullins things and said it's time to pit when pit road is closed. And credit to Carson Hocevar for pretending to follow Brad in, which I thought was very funny.
Hold on. Do you think he was pretending to follow Brad in, or do you think he was going to pit and somebody was in his ear going, whoa? Hocevar
said it over the radio because his crew chief was panicking.
I know he said it, but maybe that was like a cover up. Like, I wasn't going to pit, dog. No,
I believe that Hocevar is a smart enough racer to be able to do something like that, especially if you saw Denny Hamlin doing it as well. But
yeah.
Regardless of that, just the speed from RFK is not something we've seen for a lot of the early part of the year. Chris Buescher was definitely one of the best cars in this race, ran top five pretty much all day, at least in his strategy group, ended up fourth. Ryan Preece seemed to just appear in eighth at the end of the race, was kind of 15th most of the day, and just kept making that car better, got into the top 10. And now, because that used to be what Chris Buescher was doing at the start of the season, would be kind of nowhere and just appear in the top 10. And if that's now what your third driver is doing, because I think based on the speed from the last couple ovals, you could call Brad Keselowski the second RFK car now, just on speed at this point in the season. So if your third car now and Ryan Preece is doing what your top flight guy was at the start of the season, what an improvement over these last couple months for RFK.
Yeah, and listening to Brad Keselowski after he was the first guy they interviewed on the Post Race Show, and just listening to him talk about, they've been all season. It seems like they've been trying new things and trying to really, branch out and be like a competitive team. And I think last year when they had, the little windows of winning with Buescher being really close to winning for a little bit, and then Brad Keselowski getting the win at Darlington, I think they're like, okay, like this is something that we can really compete with Joe Gibbs and Hendrick and those teams. Like we can be just like them. And so I think they've really tried to do that, but in doing that, you're going to struggle and you're going to find things that don't necessarily work. It's happened with Hendrick. They've gone through stretches like that. Joe Gibbs has gone through stretches like that. And Keselowski hasn't been there more than 3 years. So it's going to take some time to build it into what he wants to. And I think this time in 2 years, they're going to be up there with those guys, especially with the leadership. If Buescher stays around and he'll be a veteran by then, he's got the speed. He's going to be one of those guys. And I'm really excited to see what RFK has, not only for the rest of the season, but for the future, because I do think it's only up from here, which is very impressive.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I would love to see RFK and kind of that old Roush team, which is the same organization, back at the front of the Cup field, where in my heart
maybe
they
with
at least
the Dodge
belong.
logo out front.
That'd be cool. That'd be an easy way to get to a tier one team, is be a tier one partner for a new manufacturer coming up through. But I kind of doubt that, just because Jack Roush has always been a Ford guy. But
good point.
Yeah, let's talk about Chase Elliott now. And this is a guy that I'm curious, as you being a Chase Elliott fan, how did you feel about today? Because for me, at least, this is the best I felt about Chase Elliott all season. I think this is his best oval race of the year. I'm curious what you think about it.
Yeah, so I think what I've mostly harped on Chase Elliott for in the course of the last few years doing the show is restarts. And in NASCAR today, the most important part of any race, maybe not road courses, but even there, so them, restarts are the most critical point of NASCAR races in today's, with how close the cars are and how good all the drivers are. I mean, you've seen it happen time and time again. If you can, I mean, they even do restart ratings now, like how good is so-and-so on restarts.
And Elliott's bottom five.
Yes, and his teammates, like Byron is, I think, top 3, and it pays off. You have got to be aggressive and careless on restarts. I know it sounds bad, but you can't be like, oh, what if it goes bad? It's you're in NASCAR, baby. Like you don't have time for that. You've got to be aggressive as all get out on restarts, and then once you're through everybody, then you can sit back and go, okay, now we can start. Because what he's good at is picking people apart, piecing them apart,
Yeah.
setting them up. But with the next gen car and dirty air, it's hard to do that if you're way back here. You've got to get up there, and then when you're in the top 3, you can slice the dice. And today, you texted me about it. Restarts. He was aggressive on restarts. And if he can be aggressive on restarts and just have a careless attitude, and I think it's taken him to run well, because he's run well for about 5 weeks now, like really well, more well than top 20, like top 5 speed. So I think he's got that confidence in him to go, dude, I'm Chase Elliott. Let's do it. So I think now that he's got that confidence, especially after today, and with 2 road courses coming up, I think you're going to see different Chase Elliott the rest of the season if he can be competitive on restarts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's exactly what he needed to do. And you mentioned when I texted you, he just sent it 3 wide around the outside in turn 1. I was like, that's not Chase Elliott. And he was great today. I think this is the most encouraged by him I've been all season. I don't know if the top 5 in Mexico kind of revitalized him. I don't know if it was running the Xfinity race on Saturday that got him more comfortable kind of being aggressive with other cars around him at that track going in. But regardless, if you're a Chase Elliott fan now, you're heading into his home race this weekend in Atlanta, and then you got 2 road courses. And with the form he's on right now, that has to be exactly what you want to see next up for the 9. But moving on here, let's go ahead and talk about one more team before we get into the top 15 rundown, and that's Legacy Motor Club. And I feel like every week we talk about, oh, what Legacy car is going to have the speed this week? And this weekend, John Hunter Nemechek once again showed up. His 2nd consecutive 6th place finish, which is outrageously good for Legacy. And I would say, too, it wasn't just him. Eric Jones is running on the border of the top 10 all day, ended up 13th. This team has real, Brad Keselowski talked about being one of those tier 2 teams. I would say over the last 2 months, Legacy has been a tier 2 team. They're right there behind your main guys. They're probably a little bit behind RFK still, but out of the teams they've previously been racing with, I mean, let's be honest, previously they were racing a Rick Ware and Haas factory team, but they're running with Trackhouse. They're running with Spire. They're running with those other teams pretty consistently, and to get 2 P6s back-to-back, if you would have said that last year, I think they would have thrown a pizza party or something. It's outrageously good improvement from Legacy right now.
Well, something that I don't think a lot of people have thought about is, your tier 2 Toyota team right now is 2311, but they may slide in. I mean, with all the stuff going on with 2311, manufacturer might look at their situation and go, yeah, we're going to give them some better equipment and then let y'all deal with whatever. Text me when y'all get all your stuff figured out. I mean, that's, as far as a Toyota manufacturing standpoint, they're a safer bet is all I'm saying. Because you don't know what's going to happen with one side.
If you're watching the Toyota commercials that air every week, Toyota's pushing John Hunter Nemechek hard. He is like the second guy in their commercials every week. Like this young talent. Toyota's super excited about John Hunter, and I see why. He's running well, and you look at the points. Eric Jones now is up 4 more spots into P18 in the point standings, is 2 spots out of the playoffs on points right now, which is absurd. And John Hunter Nemechek is in 22nd and is only about 12 points behind Eric Jones. So if guys like an Alex Bowman start having disasters, I still think they need to win. They definitely need to win to get into the playoffs. But there is a world where if total, I don't want to say chaos, if total domination ensues and your top winners decide they want to win everything else, if drivers like an Alex Bowman and a Bubba Wallace continue having these disasters, Legacy could sneak in there and pick up those pieces. I think it's highly unlikely, but the fact that conversation is even possible after last year when they were running 30th every week, I think needs to be applauded.
Yeah, I still don't think this year is going to amount to anything for them. It'll be a stepping stone year, if you will. And I do think next year they'll come out. I mean, they came out at the Daytona this year swinging, and everyone was like, "Oh, here we go." And then Daytona ended up being, Daytona this year.
Hey, Jimmy finished 3rd.
Yeah, how did he get there? Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
But I think going into next year, they can really look at this year and be like, okay, this was miles better than what we were last year. Okay, we're getting comfortable. We're getting better information from Toyota. We're giving Toyota better information. It's a better relationship. Let's go into next year ready to fight. And I think they will have a good shot next year, especially with the clean slate of all races they can win, like all the Talladegas, Daytonas in the regular season, everything they can win that are wild cards. And then as far as Eric Jones is always sneakily good at certain tracks. I know you like him at Darlington a lot.
Oh yeah,
And tracks
and
like that.
Darlington's before the playoffs, and if they give him a
Yeah,
top 5 car at Darlington, he wins that race.
yeah. So hey, legacy, like we said, just like we said with RFK, on the up and up right now. I think it's only up from here. They have Richard Petty, who's owned forever, and then they have Jimmy Johnson, who's not used to owning a team, and just like Brad
But has
Keselowski,
made it way better in his short time.
yeah, but just like Brad Keselowski, he's new to it. He's got to get comfortable. We're seeing that happen in front of our eyes, and I think it'd be really fun to just have like two, and obviously you have 2311 now. So you have three like teams that are owned by Denny Hamlin, Jimmy Johnson, and Brad that all grew up racing in the same generation, and
It's
they're gonna be
2012
competing.
all over again.
Yeah, they're going to be competing in the box now, so that's pretty fun to watch. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, but let's head to our top 15 rundown here. And Chase Briscoe obviously gets the win. Huge win for the 19. Joe Gibbs also comes home in second with Denny Hamlin. Ryan Blaney, I think one of the drives of the day, passing through the field twice with a failed cool suit in a day that was incredibly hot and humid. Great run for the 12. We talked about Chris Buescher and Chase Elliott a lot in fourth and fifth. John Hunter Nemechek comes home sixth. One guy we haven't talked about a ton yet, Kyle Larson in seventh, and that team doesn't feel like they're on it right now. I know they got taken out of no fault of their own at Mexico, but I feel like ever since Prime took over, they haven't had speed.
Yeah, it's just we were saying that. I mean, he finished seventh here,
or they haven't
but
had
it's just
Kyle Larson.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say. I was like, they just haven't been Kyle Larson, and this happened last year. I mean, this happened right before the playoffs last year, and everybody was like, he's not going to make it out of the first round of the playoffs. Oh my goodness, blah blah blah. blah. He's fine. Like,
he didn't make the championship four.
That's true, and it probably was the first round, incidents that caused that.
And that's the expectation for this team. Let's be honest, they want to be there every year.
Yeah, but I mean, they reset going into the playoffs anyways. So even he could suck, the rest of the regular season and then go into the playoffs like fine and just still be Kyle Larson. So I think if there is a time to falter with his 5 team, it's now. And then Cliff Daniels, he's going to get those boys right. He's probably the best guy, the most motivational guy in there. They'll be like, maybe, okay, with the races we have coming up, he's pretty decent at road courses. We have 2 road courses, but those are different. And then you have Atlanta, which we know Larson is super speedways. Yeah. So maybe the next 3 weeks, it'll continue to be just a little, top 15 speed, top 10 speed. But I think once we get done with Sonoma, that team's gonna be ready to roll. They're gonna be working on that next Oval
right
car.
Back into their happy place.
Exactly. They're gonna be working on that Dover car, and Cliff Daniels will be like, all right, this is our time to shine. And I think they're just going to go right back to where they've been the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. And continuing through the top 15 here, Ryan Preece comes home 8th. I had an ant on my computer. Okay, we're good now. I'll edit that out. All right. Continuing through the top 15, Ryan Preece came home 8th. Solid run for another RFK car, Brad Keselowski in 9th. Then Austin Cindric in 10th was up in the top 5 for some part of the day on strategy, but still pretty good run for the 2 car, I would say, at Pocono. Not somewhere I would have pegged him to be really good. Alex Bowman in 11th. So-so day for the 48. Kind of made his way back up front after some strategy stuff. Just, I don't think he was on the right call. And Josh Berry in 12th. Cindric, Bowman, Berry, I believe, were on the same strategy all day, so I think they were kind of the front of that group coming home in the top, outside the top 10 places. Mentioned Eric Jones in 13th. Ty Gibbs, again, just off his teammates, frankly, down in 14th. When you have your other Gibbs cars in first and second with Briscoe and Hamlin, and then I don't even want to talk about what Christopher Bell did today. And then Daniel Suarez rounds out your top 15 in 15th. Decent day for him, at least, even though the rest of Trackhouse had an absolute shocker. But let's do our quick little pick review here. I know you had Kyle Larson. I had Christopher Bell. I guess I do have to talk about Christopher Bell. Was nowhere all day. Well, wasn't exactly his fault. Ran top 10 early. Ran 9th for a lot of stage 1. Then got pushed back, some strategy stuff. Got caught up in a wreck with Kyle Busch. Had splitter damage. The car was just awful after that. Yeah. Leave it to me to pick the one Joe Gibbs car that wasn't remotely competitive all day pretty much. And then my dark horse was Eric Jones, and I told you I hope I picked the right side of the Legacy Motor Club tail flip, or the coin flip. I did not. It landed on tails. I called heads, and it was John Hunter, even though he still barely missed the top 5 up there in P6. How'd it go for you?
Yeah, so I had Gibbs as my dark horse. Gibbs coming off a good, momentum-based run he was on. Top 15, just a mediocre middle-of-the-pack day for him. He made a few moves up towards the pack at the end of that, short-lived. And then I had Kyle Larson because I figured, we talked about last week, Pocono's just with the dirty air. Pocono's one of those tracks that like your guys are going to dominate on it. So whoever gets out front between, I think we said Hamlin, Bell, Larson, if any three of those guys get out front, they're going to win. Hamlin was out front. It didn't happen at the pit road. Things happened. It was more strategy based today. But he just didn't have the speed today.
Yep, definitely did not have it from either of those 2 3-time winners this season. And the other almost won, which I believe we both kept talking about. How are neither of us picking Denny Hamlin? And I was getting flashbacks to Mexico as that race was winding down. I was like, if this is 2 races in a row, we both said the obvious pick and didn't pick him. We need to retire. But still, pretty decent Pocono race, I would say overall. Anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
I'm excited. Look, tune in to the episode later this week because we have Atlanta, and we're going to break down the in-season tournament, go over our picks for that. That's super excited. TNT loves their tournaments with March Madness and everything, so they're going to go all out. I'm super excited for that to get underway. Should be similar to the Prime booth if you're into that, which I know you were.
Yes.
So yeah, tune in to the Atlanta episode. We have baseball coming up this week and F1. Make sure you watch both of those as well. And without that being said, I'm Keegan. That's Micah, and we'll see y'all next episode.